All right, it's time to do the comparison between the ZTE ZMAX or Z970 and the BLU Studio 6.0 LTE, the two biggest budget phones on the market right now. As far as current time is, there's plenty of big budget phones, but for the latest for this year, it will be these two phones. I would think will be the ones that people are really looking at as far as the $250 range. The ZTE ZMAX definitely sets itself apart from the crowd with its squared, bulky body. Even though it does have somewhat chamfered edges, it really doesn't help you grip the phone any better. The ZMAX isn't really much thicker than the Studio 6.0, but when you pick it up, the difference becomes clear and you definitely notice that it is a big phone. And that's really thanks in part into the way they did the plastic on this phone and how solid the phone feels. It just feels like a brick, really. The BLU Studio 6.0 LTE has a more normal, modern look. You know, the rounded edges, it has a plastic back that is not prone to fingerprints, and it just has a look that I think is just more friendly to the eye for many, except for that camera hump on the back that houses the 13 megapixel camera. That I could have seriously did without. And before we continue on with this comparison, allow me to also add in an apology really for the ZTE ZMAX review, where I did say a few times that the phone was built with aluminum.
Now this is an aluminum pretty much all the way around it.
Extremely new mistake, and it just didn't even dawn on me until later on. Even after someone in the comments had talked about it, it still didn't dawn on me. Yeah, it's plastic. It happens. So yeah, moving on. Now for those who know both of these phones, you know that the display is kind of automatic on who it's going to go to. But allow me to break it down. The Studio 6.0 LTE has a 1080p IPS OGS HD display, and it looks very good. For a budget phone, yeah, you really can't do much better than that display, especially at 6 inches. So for those who have eye problems such as myself, and those who just don't like squinting or just don't care for the small displays, or especially if you like to watch Netflix and movies and things like that, the BLU Studio 6.0 LTE is definitely the phone you're gonna want. The display looks great. And unfortunately, for those who have the ZMAX, yeah, it looks definitely better than the ZMAX's 720p TFT display, which is only, I think, 5.7 inches. And the colors and everything, it looks decent. It looks okay, but it definitely does not look better than what's on the Studio 6.0 LTE. Now for the software, very briefly, both phones do come with 4.4.2 KitKat, and they're both, for the most part, they are both mostly stock. And that is a good thing to see, and I hope more phones start moving towards this trend and start being more stock with a little bit of customizations here and there. Unfortunately, the ZMAX does not come unlocked per se. It doesn't come with a completely stock build, so you do have some carrier software depending on which carrier you picked it up on. It's served on several carriers now. The Studio 6.0 LTE is available on Amazon and from various other places, sold unlocked, not from your carrier, but directly from BLU or another phone retailer. So that has zero bloatware, and that is an automatic win as far as the software is concerned, because no one wants bloatware of any kind. Now talking about the performance, both phones have 2 gigs of RAM, but the CPUs are slightly different, and that definitely affects benchmarks, but not so much day-to-day performance. The ZTE ZMAX has a quad-core Snapdragon 400 clocked at 1.2 GHz, which most of the time keeps the phone snappy, but admittedly it lags when opening apps and stutters when navigating around the UI from time to time. The BLU Studio 6.0 LTE has a Snapdragon 400, but instead of an MSM 8926 like the ZMAX, it has an MSM 8928 clocked at 1.6 GHz. I have no idea what that technically means, or why they did that, but for some reason, the two phones both have 2 different models. What it does mean, in other words, to me in day-to-day life, is that one phone has a little less stutter and lag than the other. And that is definitely the Studio 6.0 LTE, which is a little bit faster in day-to-day performance and opening apps and multitasking than the ZTE ZMAX. However, both phones, if you really put them side by side, you really will have to use them for as long as I did, which is an extended period of time, at least a week or two, to notice the difference between the specs and how much faster or less faster one phone is than the other. Now, just like we knew who was going to win the display war between these two, we pretty much know who's going to win when it comes to battery life. The BLU Studio 6.0 LTE has a 3200 milliamp hour battery, but it also has a 6-inch 1080p IPS display, which takes up more power as well in your day-to-day tasks. However, on the other end of the ZTE ZMAX, which has a 3400 milliamp hour battery and a 720p display that's only a TFT panel, it pretty much means that the display uses less energy, and therefore, as in your day-to-day tasks, you get a lot more battery life. Now, on a subject that I pretty much am probably the only person that really focuses on this all that much, but the sound. Both phones have rear-firing speakers, but the ZTE ZMAX has a bit of a better experience as far as sound is concerned, and that, is thanks in part to the Dolby Enhanced Audio app that's built into the phone and into the settings, and also comes with a widget and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it has a leg up because of that. And the BLU Studio 6.0 LTE doesn't really have anything. And to make matters worse, the front earpiece where it comes to hearing your calls and the sound coming from the headphone jack are both a little too low for me. I had to struggle to hear the people on the other end, even though they could hear me very clearly. And I even had to crank my music up all the way to the max end of the volume just so I can try to enjoy my music, and it still wasn't as loud as I would like. So yeah, the BLU Studio 6.0 LTE it has a pretty poor sound experience. Definitely the ZMAX on this one. All right, the camera. The camera on these two phones, to put it very simply, they're just okay. I can't hit you with all the technical jargon of dynamic range and all that kind of stuff like that, but when you in actual use, I can tell you right now, they are just okay. As far as the ZTE ZMAX, you have an 8 megapixel rear and a 1.2 megapixel front camera. 1.6 megapixel front camera, I had to check that. Yeah, so you're not getting any type of great shots out of this phone whatsoever. You do, however, have a nice camera app that gives you buttloads of video modes and picture modes, and you can do a whole lot with the camera, but the shots are just not there. They're not going to be that great. So yeah, you're really going to lean on those modes to try and get the most out of that camera. However, on the BLU Studio 6.0 LTE, you have a 13 megapixel rear and a 1.6 megapixel, a 5 megapixel front-facing camera. Now, even though the megapixels are higher on both ends, it still doesn't come out to much, whether it's because of the sensor or what have you. Yeah, it's still just an okay camera. And then to make things a little bit worse, the camera app I thought was just very plain, had tons of extra features that were just useless, extra settings that, like I was said in the review, you will get a little bit more out of that camera by knowing what some of those settings are, but it's still gonna amount to not much at all. So this is not a win for either of those phones. They're both just okay. Now for things that you should know about both phones, just some little bit of extras to help you out here. Studio 6.0 LTE has Bluetooth 3.0. The ZMAX actually has Bluetooth 4.0. Neither of these phones have NFC. If you need that, the ZenFone 2 or the Auto 3 may be your best bet. Please do check out my review for the Auto 3 coming up, and the unboxing will also be coming up this coming week as well, whenever this video is released. The BLU has no notification LED. To make things even worse about this problem is BLU decided that because they didn't put in a notification LED for the Studio 6.0 LTE, they will make the screen blink when the phone is hooked up to charge. This, of course, is not that big a problem, but for me, it was annoying as crap because when my phones are charging, they're right there next to me when I'm working or when I'm sitting at home on my desk, and I don't want to see that big 6-inch 1080p display blinking on and off like that, and there's no way to turn off that feature. The Studio 6.0 LTE has a headset notification that you can't swipe away. Why? All right, that about does it for the comparison between these two phones of the ZTE ZMAX and the BLU Studio 6.0 LTE. I hope the information was very helpful to you in making a decision between these two phones, because you can still find them, even though admittedly the ZMAX is not that available anymore because of stupid people. Please do check out my social media websites, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter. I'm all over the place. Links are in the description box below. Also, don't forget to check out Eshcole.com for any detailed articles for tech and anime. I got reviews and all kinds of other stuff going on over there. Also, please don't forget, you have a good one. I'll see you. Bye.